You see those headlines all the time, right? Some massive company buys another one for billions and billions of dollars. And you have to wonder, how in the world did they land on that specific company? It feels like this super complex, kind of secret process. But what if I told you there's actually a playbook for it? A really methodical system that takes a whole world of possibilities and narrows it down to one single gigantic decision. Let's break down how they do it.
So yeah, how does this really happen? How does a team of executives go from literally thousands of potential companies out there to writing a check for just one? Well, the process is actually surprisingly logical. The best way to think about it is like high-stakes house hunting, except you're not looking for a dream home, you're trying to find a company that is the perfect piece of the puzzle for your future. Before you even start browsing for houses, you have to know what you're looking for, right? Same thing here. In the corporate world, it all starts with defining the why. A company doesn't just wake up one morning and decide to go shopping. Nope. They build a really detailed M&A playbook, and it's all based on a super clear set of strategic goals. And these goals, they become the buyer's must-have list. So what's on it? Are they trying to expand into Europe? Well, that's market expansion. Do they desperately need some cutting-edge AI technology that they just can't build themselves? That's a technology acquisition. Or, hey, maybe they just need to bring in a world-class team of engineers. Each one of these goals points them toward a completely different type of company. Everything, and I mean everything, revolves around this one core question. This is the North Star for the entire process. Every company they look at, every piece of data they analyze, it's all just to answer this one thing. Does this target give us the absolute best bang for our buck, both strategically and financially? Okay, so once they know why they're buying, it's time to figure out the who, and they start by casting a really wide net, sometimes looking at thousands of potential companies. And then the filtering begins. And just like you'd filter a search on a real estate website, companies screen their targets. They filter by industry, by size, and even by ownership type. Is the company public or private? This lets them take a massive list and pretty quickly narrow it down to just a handful of really serious contenders. All right, so now they've got a shortlist. This is where the real work starts. This is the deep dive, the corporate version of getting a full home inspection, checking the foundation, making sure there are no termites in the walls before you even think about making an offer. The first big test is all about strategic fit. See, they're not just buying numbers on a spreadsheet. They're buying a living, breathing organization. They're looking at all these key areas. How well does the target's market line up with theirs? Can their technologies actually integrate and work together? And this is a big one. Will the two company cultures just work? Each of these gets a rating, a cold, hard look at whether it's a good match. Then, of course, comes the financial deep dive. This is where the rubber really meets the road. Is this house a sound investment? They'll compare key numbers side by side. Revenue, debt, profitability, often using something called EBITDA margin, which is really just a fancy way to look at a company's core operational profit. And then there's the big one, the valuation. Can we actually afford this, and is it really worth the price tag? Look, any big purchase has risks, and buying a whole company is no different. But smart companies don't just make a list of problems. For every single potential risk, they have a game plan. Worried that all the key talent is going to walk out the door? You have retention bonuses ready. Concerned about regulatory hurdles? You start talking to regulators early. For every major roadblock, there has to be a clear strategy to deal with it. Now, this might be the most underrated part of the whole process. The people factor. Seriously, you can have the perfect financial model, the perfect strategic fit, but if the company cultures clash, the whole deal can fall apart. And it's no surprise that studies show a huge chunk of mergers, somewhere between 70 and 90%, fail to live up to their financial promise simply because of culture clashes. They look at everything. Is the leadership top-down or more collaborative? How do they make decisions? A mismatch here can cause massive headaches down the line. So after all that analysis, the strategy, the financials, the risks, the culture, it's finally time to put it all together. All of this data gets boiled down to build one clear, decisive case that they can take to their board of directors. And this isn't just some vague idea, it's a concrete, step-by-step action plan. They start with some initial outreach, then they move into what's called due diligence, which is basically an intense deep dive into every single contract and financial record to make sure there are no skeletons in the closet. Only then can they build the final case and ask the board for the green light. And that final recommendation, it has to be crystal clear. This quote here is a perfect example. It's basically the elevator pitch for a multi-billion-dollar deal. And notice how it connects directly back to those goals we saw at the very beginning, getting new technology and expanding into a new market. It all comes full circle.
So, this is it. This is the final product. A clean, simple summary that gives the leadership team everything they need to know. It clearly names the top targets, it states the core reason for doing the deal, and it gives a very clear, unambiguous recommendation on what to do next. It's the result of hundreds of hours of work, all boiled down to a single page.
And there you have it, the methodical, data-driven playbook for a corporate takeover. But, it does leave us with one final fascinating question. The process is logical, it's objective, but what happens when it leaves the spreadsheet and enters the real world? A world where human ambition, egos, and messy boardroom politics can change absolutely everything. Well, that's a story for another day.